Very good morning, students. In today's session, I, Dr. Sangamitra Das, will be talking to you about understanding myself. So, the main question arises over here that why should we understand ourselves? So why should I study myself? So actually, the self is the basis of everything. Okay, so our all our desires, everybody has some various types of desires. So our desires, our expectations are all set in the self. So somebody has the desire to become famous. Somebody wishes to have a very good job. Somebody has to wants to have a very good relationship. So it becomes very important for us to understand ourselves because these you can say that these desires, thoughts, and activities in the self are all happening in the self. So if we know ourselves better, we'll be able to understand the other people in a better way. We'll be able to understand the relationships in a better way. So to be happy and to remove the cause of unhappiness, it is very necessary that we understand the various states of ourself. So if we are able to be very confident about ourselves, we are able to clarify all our confusions, we are able to understand ourselves, it helps us to become self confident. It helps us to establish more synergy between the self and the body. So the study of self actually enables us to know our weakness and how to remove it. So the more we understand ourselves, it helps us to better understand our program, that what is actually valuable for us and what do we ultimately want and how we're going to fulfill those desires, thoughts, and expectations. So it becomes necessary for us to understand ourselves. Now, what are the activities that are going on in the self? Actually, the self is a conscious unit, while the body is actually material unit. So the interaction between the I and the body is in the form of exchange of information. You can see in this diagram also that you can see the self over here and you can see the body over there. So you can see that there is exchange of information between the body and the self. So the focus of attention is on the two categories of attributes of the self, namely the powers of the self and the corresponding activities as the manifest outcomes of these powers. So power is, it means the basic capacity in the self. They are the desires, the thoughts, and the expectations. Now, if we talk about the activities that are happening in the self are mainly imaging. That is, आप चित्रण कर रहे हो. What is you're thinking about things. You're analyzing the things. You're selecting and tasting the things. So the activity of analyzing means breaking down of the image into various parts or to open it up. Selecting and tasting is with the expectation of fulfilling our desires with the expectation of happiness. So the activity of selecting and tasting is the basic level through which the self interacts with the body. So you can see the activities in the self are related. So as we already said, there are two possible flows of the activities and both the activities keep on taking place. And so what is actually the activities? One activity is that there is flow of information from outside the body to inside. That is, from the body, it is going to the self or the I. So the self is receiving the sensations from the body and it is being tasted in the I. For I can take an example that our self sees a car through the information through the eyes, uh, and it passes on the information to the self. So over here, as we have talked in the previous lecture, that I is the instrument of the self through which we are seeing the beautiful car, and it is now the information is being passed from the body to the self. So based on the taste, the thought could be triggered. Example, that we start thinking about the car. Once we have seen the car through our eyes, we start thinking about the car. Now based on these thoughts, there may be desires which are being set, that when we have started to think about the car, it forms an image in ourselves, and we start thinking that if we have a very good car, it will make our life very luxurious. We'll be leading a comfortable life, and so there's the urge to have that car becomes our desire. So now the selection leads to thoughts and the thoughts leads to desire. So there is a flow of information from inside, that is from the eye, to the outside, that is the body. So when we have set a desire, that we start thinking, we have set a desire for having a car. Now we start thinking about that by how we are going to purchase the car, and we start thinking that we'll be having a good life by purchasing the car. We also start to think that how to get the car, what will the cost of the car, how can I have that car. So all these desires and thoughts start coming into our mind. Based on this only we start making selection so that we can fulfill those thoughts. For example, we choose the car, we start finding more and more about the car, what should be the shape of the car, what should be the color of the car, and ultimately end up buying the car. So you can see that the desires have led to thoughts and these thoughts have led to selection. So together we call these activities as imagination. Activities in the self are continuously going on. In this diagram also see this following diagram, you can see that the desires thought that there is flow of information between the self and the body, and we have desires thought and expectations which are already going on in the body. So your desires and expectation, they all the three make up the imagination. You can see that there is flow of information from the body to the self, and our thoughts, our desires and expectations are also being influenced by the sensation. So sensation is what that where if we watch TV and we see that beautiful car, so we're getting a sensation that by purchasing the car we're going to be leading a happy life. So our thoughts, desires and expectations are being affected by the sensation. You can see the activities in the self are related to each other. So the activity of imagination in I is continuously going on and it is not temporary. So the power may change but the activity is continuous. The object of the taste may change but the activity of selecting and tasting is continuous. Also what you analyze may keep changing, the activity of analyzing is continuous. For example, my object of taste may change from vascular to engineering or maybe nice looking bike, etc. Similarly, I analyze about my personal life at one moment and about my surroundings at the very next moment. I may start thinking about my relationships. So our activities are keeping on changing, but continuously they are going on in our thoughts. So these activities keep going on in us irrespective of whether we want them or we do not want them. This is what happens when you say, I was going to the exam and that song kept repeating itself in me. So it was so distracting that continuously we are thinking something or the other. So, what is the main problem today that is arising in this world? The main problem today is that our desires, our thoughts, and expectations are largely set by preconditioning. Now, what is preconditioning? Preconditioning means we have assumed something about it on the basis of prevailing notions about it. We have not verified the desires in our own right. We have not done a self exploration that whether it is right or wrong or whether it is naturally acceptable to us. So, as a result, what is happening that we are not clear about what we'll get out of the fulfillment of that particular desire. What is the issue with that? Unless we verify our desires, we may not even know whether they are ours or not. So we may end up spending an entire lifetime accumulating the desires that are not ours and running about trying to fulfill them. Now, our desires, thoughts, and expectations are also affected by sensations. So, a perception associated with stimulating of a sense organ or with a specific body condition. Maybe the sensation of heat, a visual sensation can be there. So the term sensation is actually commonly used to refer to the subjective experience resulting from stimulation of a sense organ. For instance, a sensation of warmth, sour or green, or wish to have a comfortable life by purchasing the car. So these desires are being affected by sensations and preconditionings. So suppose you have seen the bike and not and associated with greatness. Rather you would like to the way it looked. Then this is based on sensation. This is largely the case with us today. Either we are operating on the basis of preconditioning desire that is being set from outside or on the basis of sensation that is coming from the body. So this is largely the case with us today. Either we are putting the basis of preconditionings or on the basis of sensation. So yeah, what is happening that we may have a desire to have respect by becoming the owner of a big house. So we have an image for fulfilling this. Here the power is the desire and the activity is imaging. So based on this desire, this image, we start working out the details of the house. We start about thinking that how many rooms there will be in a house, where will be the veranda, where will be the porch. So there's some image is formed in ourselves. The image of wanting respect from the house. We have thought that by owning a big house, we'll be given respect. So the activity of analyzing starts within us. which means that we're breaking the image into various parts. So here the power is thought and the activity is analyzing. So now one chooses the size, the color, etc., layout of the room, the color of the house. So this is called as selecting sorry, or tasting. So this is done with the expectation of fulfilling our desires, with the expectation of happiness. So we are thinking everything that ultimately we'll be happy by fulfilling these desires. So everyone is actually doing a variety of activities throughout the day. Somebody studying, somebody's playing, somebody's eating, sleeping. So one does all this thinking, imagining, analyzing, expecting happiness. So this is the basic capacity for any activity, and this is known as the power. Then, as we already talked about the example that we desire to have a big house, so this image is being formed within us. So we need a big house. In this case, the power is desire, and the activity that we're going through is imaging. So this breaking down of image is analyzing. So the details of the house are the size, layout, the rooms, etc. So all this is called selection or tasting. So all information from the body is passed on to the cell through tasting. All directives to the body from the cell path through the activity of selecting. So the power of expectation or activity of selecting or tasting in I is continuously going on. You can take the example that we wish to eat a samosa or a kachori maybe. So what is the basis? We had the taste of both the items in us from us. We already know how a samosa or a kachori will taste. So we have this selection and tasting. It can be also the basis of selection. Similarly, we select and plan a career also. So selection is always made so that we are able to fulfill a taste we already have in us about being favorable or it can be unfavorable. So the activity is selecting or tasting, and the capacity for that activity is called expectation or asha. So for example, we decide that we select which motorcycle to buy based on the earlier assumptions of which the motorcycle looks better. So we have a taste that this motorcycle will look better. So we're continuously expecting, selecting and tasting are complementary. So the power of activity or activative analyzing. We all think throughout the day. We want to have a good life. So we call this as thought. Today is actually is analyzing. In analyzing what we're doing, we're splitting the image. We have a desire into smaller details and detail everything out. So this power is called the thought. So everybody has desires and the desires are in the form of images. Hence the activity you can say of imaging and power is the desire. If we list down all our desires, like what we do, wish to do, so that we can be happy. Want a big house, we want to have respect, and we want to have a big car, we want to go on a world tour. So we'll see that actually we have a lot of desires in us, and from the desires, we have lots of imaginations with us. So we wish to fulfill all that so that we can be happy. So the desires may be set, the desires are based on thoughts. For example, if we're watching TV and over there we think about the TV is based on the scene and images form slowly for having pleasant life by watching TV. So in this way we want to have a good television. Thus the selection and the tasting is leading to thoughts and the thoughts are leading to desire. And imagination is already talked about that it is your thoughts, desires, thoughts, and expectations which are put together. So when already that we have already talked that from when the information is flowing from outside to inside. Okay, and that is the information flows from the body to the self and from the self to the body. So if our imaginations, if our desires, thoughts and expectations, they're operating on the basis of sensation or preconditioning. That means I am paratantra. And if they're operating on the basis of natural acceptance, that means I am self-organized or swatantra. Swatantra, that means I am free from other the preconditionings and sensations. So imagining is continuing all the time. People are very imaginative and they're thinking throughout the day and night. So the desiring is taking place throughout the day and night. The activity of selecting or tasting is also continuous. So people are expecting something or the other all the time. The activity of analyzing goes on all the time. One may be analyzing one problem at one moment and the very next moment they can shift to another problem. So these desires, thoughts and expectations are largely set by the preconditioning or the sensation. So, what is the problem today? The main problem today is that our desires are set on the basis of preconditionings. Okay, we already have some preconditionings in our mind, and our desires being set on that particular basis. Or our expectations are desired on the basis set on the basis of sensations. Like you have seen a bike and you like the way it looked and you just fell for it. So your desires and thoughts are being set by sensations. So what is happening? The main effect of this problem is what? That sometimes you're desiring this, sometimes you're desiring something else. And as your desire keeps on changing, your thoughts also keep on changing. You can see in this diagram. You have desire 1, desire 2, desire 3 because our desires are keeping on changing. Accordingly, we're to fulfill that desire, we're having various types of thoughts. So there are various ways in which you can fulfill those thoughts. So our thoughts are also keeping on changing, and when our thoughts keep on changing, our expectations are from that particular thoughts also keep on changing. So what is happening? The desires keep on changing, the thoughts related to the desires keep on changing, and the expectations related to thoughts are keeping on changing. So you can see that nothing is stable, and because of this change, what is happening? Our desires are in conflict, our thoughts are also in conflict, and our expectations are also in conflict. You can take the example you want to become a great man. So you have a desire to be a great man, maybe by having a very large fashionable house. You can use any means. Secondly, you want to become famous also. So your desire is changing from becoming famous to becoming a great man. Maybe you wish to do something else. So your desires are keeping on changing. So desires are in conflict, thoughts are also in conflict, and expectations are also in conflict. So where actually what happens that we start feeling lethargic, we start feeling guilty, and we are actually undecided or unsure that what actually we want. So our desires are in contradiction. So desires, thoughts, selections. So the selections are in conflict, which further results in unhappiness. So the problem faced today is that due to preconditioning desires, thoughts, and selections, these conditions goes on shifting as the input from outside keep on changing. So aspirations are shaky and one lacks confidence, and this leads to unhappiness, stress, and tension. Thus, if the desires, thought, and expectation based on preconditioning, it will lead to confusion. Further, the lack of clarity about self, relationships, society, nature will lead to lack of the self-confidence and a feeling of unfulfillment. So the main process of self-exploration initiates the activities of realization and understanding. So there is self-organization in the activities leading to harmony in the self, which is continuity of happiness. So the main effects of this type of shifting of desires, thought, and expectation is that what is happening? We are having wavering aspirations. Our goals keeping on shifting as the inputs from outside also keep on changing. So our desires also keep on shifting. So because their source is outside and these preconditioned desires may come from what we read or hear from the media. So we're having wavering aspirations. Secondly, because our desires are very shaky, we're not sure about them, we lack confidence. As a result of lacking of confidence in the true sense, our confidence seems relative. That is, we keep comparing ourselves with the others to feel confident. Thirdly, because of these wavering aspirations and lack of confidence, we are actually unhappy. Since our desires, thoughts, and expectations are in conflict, it becomes the cause of our unhappiness, leading to stress and tension. So, lack of qualitative improvement in us, we focus largely on fulfillment, the needs of the body. As a result, we live with a sense of lack of fulfillment. We're doing many things, accumulating a lot, progressing on paper, but we don't feel that we have improved, that we must become much better. So it seems that only the things around us are changing. So we can conclude that to sum up, we can say that if our desires, thoughts, and expectations are based on preconditionings, we're generally in a great state of confusion or conflict. So this leads to confusion, unhappiness, and stress. We actually are having a lack of clarity about the self and the relationships. So we have lack of confidence. We have a feeling of being unfulfilled or unsettled. So we operate largely on the basis of the environment, driven from the outside, either from sensations or based on precondition. So in order to become swatantra, or you can say in order to become self-organized, it is very necessary that whatever sensations or preconditionings we're getting from outside, It is verified on the basis of natural acceptance. And if it is naturally acceptable to us, then only we should accept it. In case the proposals are based on natural acceptance, what will happen that we'll become more self-organized, we'll become more swatantra. We will become swatantra. That means we are free from the preconditionings and sensations that we are getting from outside. So it will be much more conflict. Our desires, thoughts, and expectations will not be in conflict, and we'll be much more happy because we will not be having the conflict within us. So that means when on the basis of self-exploration, the proposals are accepted by us on the basis of natural acceptance. Our desires, thoughts, and our expectations will not be in conflict. They will be our own. So we'll be free from the preconditionings that we're getting from outside. And we'll be much more happy and will be fulfilling our desires. So that is the main thing, that we must understand ourselves. When we're able to understand ourselves, we're able to understand our relationship with other human beings and with our other entities in the nature. And when we're able to understand the other entities of the nature, it gives us a self-confidence. We're able to understand the relationship, we're able to live happily with other entities also. Okay, so thank you students. We'll meet in the next class.